Hello, it is raining out and I'm happy to be back, and we're going to go over carbon dating because I believe that it's become an interesting thing that comes up in debates, and I think we have to understand that our dating processes, where they come from and what they are, because I think people have a lot of misconceptions and we want it really bad and we don't always know what carbon dating and the dozens and dozens of other dating methods we have out there are. So I'm going to go over the founder of carbon dating. I'm going to go over what he knows about carbon dating. His name is Willard Libby, was the founder. It was in, I got my notes, so if I look down, it was in 1946. Carbon-14 or C14 dating was considered to be a tremendous breakthrough in 1946. How it works is this. And this is a very easy, simplified way of describing it. How it works: carbon is a naturally abundant element found in the atmosphere, earth, ocean, and every living creature. Key point, excuse me, remember living creatures. It's formed by the sun's radiation striking the Earth's atmosphere, which turns the nitrogen in the atmosphere into C14, carbon-14. C14 then combines with oxygen to create carbon dioxide. This rests on things, if you will. It gets absorbed into plants. Animals eat plants, and then animals eat other animals, and the levels go up and down. Yeah, excuse me. And then, so the carbon dioxide works through the whole system. It's found in plants and animals. It's also found in rocks and trees, and like I just read. When a creature dies, it ceases to continue to consume carbon, or C14. And the C14 in its body starts to decay back into nitrogen. If we find a creature's remain... Alright, so just to be... You may have trouble following it up to this point. I don't expect everybody to be able to remember everything I'm saying. Excuse me, I've had a tickle in my throat. I fought a bug for like 2 weeks ago, and it's just a tickle, and that's all it does is cough, cough. It's annoying. If we find a creature's remains who has a C14 level, half of what it is supposed to be, we can assume... Now, here's the issue. This is what the original author said. Problem is we're assuming. We don't know what the original level was when it died. Assume means to guess. The creature has been dead for about 5,730 years. Because we know this, that it takes that long. It takes that long for the amount of C14 to decay, and so on and so forth. The clock starts ticking at the moment of death. Now, here's a point I want to make before we go any further. I told you, remember living creatures. One, carbon dating only works accurately on living creatures, if it can be held accurately at all. Here's why. C14 can turn into nitrogen at varying speeds. For one, a rock doesn't consume anything, so it's not taking in any new carbon. So there's no previous level to all of a sudden wear down. It's simply a change of heat in the atmosphere, the amount of stress the thing is under, what it's exposed to, all creates different variations of the rate of decay and what your reading is going to be. And that's in all of the dozens of things they use. You know, any kind of stress, change in temperature, all that can fiddle with your findings. So if someone comes to you and says, we have, you know, an Egyptian, you know, hieroglyphic, thank you, Lord, hieroglyphic that we date to 100,000 BC, what did they just say? They just say they don't know anything about what the founder of carbon dating says or how carbon dating works as a whole. They will come up with a result, but to put any real faith or trust in that result, I wish I had that much faith in that. So basically only living things. I want to add an interesting trivia fact here. Even in living things, the results are very, 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 very varied. To give you some idea, this is a classic game, we've got a number of these, is on the same mammoth, the back end was 20-something thousand years old, carbon dated, and the front end of it was 17,000-something years old. Now, I heard a joke once, and I have to agree with it, is that's a really long birth. Yeah, how many women would like to be in labor that long? At the back end of it's 20,000 years, and the front end's 17,000. So carbon dating varies. In fact, the standard for it being off can be over 24,000 years, which is another problem because as we'll go over, carbon dating only works if the thing is less than 16,000 years old, because any reading past 16,000 years old can't be read because the carbon, there's such a small reading you can't use it. So here's the first, here's a problem. It only works on living things. Doesn't go into rocks, and rocks don't eat anything. So there's a problem with being able to measure it. It only works for a few thousand years. Readings become too small to read at 16,000 years max. Many people are willing to admit that, including on the side that defends the carbon dating systems and all these other systems as well. They're willing to stretch it to around 20,000 years. Some get a little more feisty and defensive, but it really, for the most part, the honest ones really say it's around 16,000 years. Here's a big kicker. It only works at equilibrium, which means carbon dating should only be used if the planet has reached a state of equilibrium. Now, what equilibrium is the amount of carbon being created is the same amount that's leaving, so that the amount of carbon on the planet and in the living thing never goes up and never goes down. We have a standard that we can use. It stays even. That's the state of equilibrium. If it goes up, if it's going up and down, then it's in a state of flux. Now here's the kicker, and go ahead and check my words, because I got a lot of skeptics that are hitting me all over the place on YouTube. So here's your kicker. The state of science, as all tests that we have to this day, says the Earth has not yet reached a state of equilibrium, which first basically means carbon dating should not be used because we can't get an accurate reading with it. Number two, science has also deduced, and Willard Libby back in his day deduced, that it would only take 30,000 years for the Earth to reach the state of equilibrium. That's a problem, because it means the planet's less than 30,000 years old, and that's science speaking, not the Bible. That's science, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not bringing in the Bible. I'm just going to say what science says. So the planet's less than 30,000 years old. Otherwise, we'd have the state of equilibrium, and we'd be able to actually carbon date something. Here's the thing. Libby made the assumption that the amount of C14 in the atmosphere today would be the same amount found in living plants or animals. He guessed this because he thought C14 decay was stable, aka equilibrium. It was estimated, now once again estimated, that means guessing, 30,000 years for C14 to reach equilibrium. Tests today suggest the Earth hasn't reached equilibrium. Results always vary. The problem is the planet really isn't more than 30,000 years old. This produced all kinds of issues. The geologic column I can go into. I'm not going to go into that right now. But we have issues because carbon dating, the geologic column is all really circular reasoning. And I know that's a big thing for me to just say. I'm not going over anything yet. That will probably be, I'll make that my next video now. But the problem is it's circular reasoning, because they use the fossils to date the rocks, but the rocks to date the fossils. I'm sorry to be sarcastic. Think about it. You're using the fossils to date the rocks, but then you're using the rocks to date the fossils. Yeah. And by the way, one of the things that made me research this was why I got interested in the carbon dating and the C14 is Christians were going out there. And you had the geologic column, which is, I'll explain it and I'll draw a little picture. I have very little resources, so it'll be an incredibly cruddy looking picture. But you have all the different layers of the Earth's rocks. You know, things like the first mollusks, like clams and whatnot, turning into fish, turning into amphibians, and eventually up to dinosaurs and humans and whatnot. You know, there was always this theory of, you know, well, because the things that couldn't run fast were on the bottom because when the flood happened, they got buried first, and you know, it was all just. I used to listen to that, and even as a Christian, I'd sit back and go, "That is an interesting theory, but it doesn't work at all." So I was curious because if the geologic, let's admit it, if the geologic column was real, then the Bible's account, the geologic column calls the Bible a liar. End of subject. Says God's lying. So I was very curious, and what I uncovered is really the geologic column does not exist. I'll go over all of that. All right. Anyways, I guess my videos are being watched in over 32 countries right now. So welcome aboard. I want to thank the subscribers. I want to thank people for the encouragements because it's good to have the encouragement. And I also want to thank people for challenging me, and I want to thank people for causing me to really check my faith and check something before I said it. I actually rewatched this. I'm going to rewatch this video. I rewatch it before I play it. As people give me stuff, sometimes if it really something keeps coming up, I'll put in an annotation. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about because I know I just run things. In my video, I did a commentation and I dealt with people say, you know, I don't mind going to hell because all my friends will be there. One of my friends at work turned to me and says, I watched your video. I wanted to be sure that you knew that some people say that jokingly because when you say it in the video, you're acting like you just don't know people use that as a joke. I know that. I make my videos hard because I want to stir things up in you so that God can do a work in you. That's, you know, I know people joke that. So I put an annotation in there saying, yes, I know this is sometimes used as a joke. I'm making this because some people don't use it as a joke, and I wanted to explain the parameters of what the implications of that are. Okay. That's it. We're done. That was a simple video. God bless you all.